Guys, this is Alfie Whattam, the founder and host of the London Technology Podcast, where I have informal conversations with some of the most interesting digital and tech leaders across London and the UK. Today, I'm joined by Ben from Primer. Thanks so much for taking the time, Ben. Can you just start by telling us a little bit about yourself, mate, what you're currently working on and that sort of thing?
Yeah, thanks, Alfie. Yeah, so I am currently the Chief Product Officer at Primer. Primer is a natural language processing company. We work in that space to kind of understand billions and billions and billions of documents, process those documents and make sense of the world. So the way I've kind of likened it to the layman is, if the calculator was a way of making sense of big numbers, kind of Primer and natural language processing is a way of making sense of loads of words, so it's kind of like, how do we make sense of this world? There's so much untapped knowledge. There's the information gap, which continues to grow massively, as we produce more and more documentation and unstructured information. It's like, well, there's nuggets of information, there's so many things in that world, so how do we create the machines to be able to help us understand it? How do we create the calculator for those words? So that's what we currently do at Primer. That's what we're doing. Our clients work in national security. They're in national security. They're in various different large organizations that we all know and love, the kind of brand names that we use every day, potentially. So we don't talk about too much about our brands who we work with. We certainly can't in national security because but even the kind of the places that we work with these wonderful brands that we're able to work with, we don't really mention them either. So yeah, it's pretty exciting, and so that's where I'm at now. Where was I before? I was the Global Chief Technology Officer at AKQA. And so the reason I'm not a Chief Technology Officer at a natural language, artificial intelligence, machine learning company is because of the fact that the technology is so much more advanced than I was, even at AKQA. And AKQA, if other people don't know what that is, it was a digital agency, or still is, and it really was renowned at the time, and still is, I'm sure, for being the world's best, kind of most awarded agency in the digital sector. It was born out of digital from minute one. I think everyone thought that the company was crazy, that it was going straight into digital all those years ago, which didn't really exist at the time, just starting to come through, and Ajaz had that kind of insight that this was going to be a big space. And so I built it out in that area, and we were lucky to grow a wonderful organization which really did get awarded for some wonderful pieces of work along the way. So it was deemed to be the most innovative agency. So I was at the cutting edge of technology more often than not, building platforms which were emerging as kind of things that brands needed. Brands needed these platforms to kind of start to operate in the digital space, but they didn't know how to build these digital platforms. Even the systems integrators weren't really in that space. They were behind the scenes. And so we were building content management platforms, commerce platforms. We quite often were the world's first in commerce. We were the world's first in helping large brands understand content management. But more importantly, more excitingly for this conversation, we were in the cutting edge of mobile application development, building some of the world's first mobile apps for iPad, iPhone, and some phenomenal applications for massive clients. And the big client that AKQA had, and one of our most famed ones, was Nike. And we did wonderful things for Nike Training Club, which was at the time the world's most downloaded fitness app. And we did so many other things. We were so lucky to just use the latest and greatest technology and see how it fitted within a consumer experience. Previously to that, it was KPMG. We don't talk about that. We wear blue shirts like you. And then prior to that, it was a kind of a coding job in a kind of what you would call these days, all those years ago, fintech. And those days it was just a small company, and I learned a phenomenal amount from just incredible minds. So I didn't realize at the time how incredible those minds were and how advanced that they were. And then before that, I was just a computer science student, and had this aspiration that I was going to be, before that, a world-class alpine skier, because I was pretty good at that and competed a lot in that space around Europe. And that didn't quite happen, so I fell back on computer science. So that's what I am today. That's what I was then.
Awesome. You've definitely got the skiing vibe to you. I don't know why, but I feel that then when I see you. And yeah, obviously, wicked companies. I used to work. KPMG and AKQA were a client of mine when I was all the way over in New Zealand for a couple of years and working there.
Oh, wow.
Running a tech recruitment agency, and so it just shows, global big businesses. You've worked for, big brands as a CTO, now as a CPO, as a founder in situations as well. So you've been in the industry for a long time, Ben. Now, a lot of people that watch these podcasts, they're either just getting into tech or maybe they've been working as a developer or something else for a couple of years, and they really want to, take that next step up, whether that's to a management role or maybe even managers wanting to get into like a C-suite position like yourself. I appreciate that the advice is probably varied depending on what level they're in, but have you got any advice overall for people that are kind of wanting to, I suppose, move up in their tech careers and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think there's no, it's a hard question, right? Everyone's different is the truth. As you said, I would say at the end of the day, there's no secret to hard work. Hard work, I set quite clear goals in terms of what I wanted to achieve at the time. And I knew that I was going to build the foundations of my career on going into coding. And I wasn't the best coder. In actual fact, when I came out of university from science, I was okay. But to get my first job, I had to read Visual Basic in 21 days over a two-day period to pass this exam. So, and I think that kind of sets the scene really in terms of how hard you have to be prepared to work hard, and how hard you are prepared to work is where you go. So there's that piece there. So I don't think there's any secret. I think the reality is what I did is I set out my clear things about, I know I needed to build my foundations in coding. And then I knew I had to sort of get an architectural role. So I understand if you don't know the basics, then you can't build. If you don't know how to build the building in the first place, you can't design the building. And so once you design the building, and you build really great foundations, you can build anything. And so I went from coding into foundations, into architecture, and then from architecture, I knew that I had to sort of start to go into management. And you have in every career, especially in early stages, you have this kind of intersection of where you're going to go, don't you? You're like, am I going to continue to be an IC, an individual contributor, as they say in the US, or am I going to go down the management side, kind of leadership road? And I think I couldn't concentrate. Whenever I came out of coding, I couldn't concentrate in a social environment because my head was still over there and I hated it. So I knew that coding wasn't for me. I just couldn't get out of that dimension. And you really have to be in a dimension to be a great coder, I think. And so, yeah, you built your foundations. And I think outside of that, how do you then progress without hard work and so forth? At the end of the day, you have to become a great delegator. It doesn't matter what level you are. You have to be able to start to delegate. Even if you haven't got the stripe on your shoulder, you have to be able to delegate certain small tasks to the other people. So that allows you to sort of like focus your mind on the truly value add spaces that really going to make the difference and get you noticed within the organization. I think the best skill that anyone can have and should have is listening. I really believe that listening to people above you, people below you, people, your peers, is the key skill to understand how to navigate how you go forward. And without listening, and a lot of people think that alpha male leadership is the way to be, it's not. I don't believe, especially in this way. So I think listening would be the critical skill. And then ultimately, it's about just taking ownership of certain things and defining and taking ownership of one particular area which you can be famous for. And I think with that, you can get recognized, and with that, then you can propel your way forward. So lots of different things there: listening, delegation, having that decision in your mind about where you're going to go from once you've built your foundations and be committed to that. Setting audacious goals, which I did, and they were, and in fact, monetary as well. I wanted to get to a certain level, and I got stuck in my career for a period of time where I hit a certain goal financially, however bad that is to say, which I think is the wrong goal actually, but I did, and I set it and I hit it, and I was like, well, what do I do now? And it wasn't, don't get me wrong, it wasn't a massive amount of money, by the way. We're not talking anything massive, but I set it, and I didn't know where to go thereafter. I was like, yeah, I made it. We haven't made it at all. That's just like that far on where you really need to be. So constantly setting your goals ahead of you is going to be a critical thing to continue to progress. And even now, I've got to reset those goals.
Yeah, some really good building blocks of success there, not just in tech, but in any career, really. There's a couple of things that you mentioned, which I really love there. Listening, and I'd second that, listening to understand, not just listening to reply, because it's so oftentimes we're listening and we're already thinking of what we're going to say in our head, and it's a habit that I've tried to force myself personally to get better at, and actually taking the time to really appreciate what someone's saying and try to understand it from my point of view and stuff. And that's something that I'd agree will massively help you out in your career, tech or otherwise, as well as I love that you honed on the fundamental fact that hard work will never really go out of style, because so many times in the Instagram world that we live in, everybody wants to double down on working smart, and they'll do everything possible to avoid working hard. But if you work smart and you work hard, then what? Then that's when you become unstoppable, right? So
that's exactly right. Yeah, there's no secret sauce really. At the end of the day, that is about putting the graft in. If you look at sport, for example, the famous stories around kind of the Beckhams of the world and players, Wilkinson was left on the field practicing when everyone's gone home. And I haven't witnessed that, but what I do know is that those stories prevail left, right and centre for the books that we read. So for the book that they get to write when they're 40, 50 years old about the accomplishments they had, we're all about the hard work previously to get the opportunity. So, yeah.
Awesome. So, look, you've been in this space for a while, especially when it comes to cutting edge tech, with regards to some of the things that you were doing, not just at AKQA, but also, within Primer itself, in terms of AI and whatnot. Is there anything at the moment that gets you really excited from a tech perspective, from an innovation perspective? It could be one thing, it could be a couple of things that you think is going to have a real big impact, Ben, on the future and on the world moving forward?
Well, I mean, I'm not going to self-promote Primer, but if I just take myself back about why I joined Primer in the first place, and it wasn't about national security, and it wasn't about kind of commercial organizations, and we have to make sure that we serve and show this use case into what I would call the elite of the world. The national securities and large organizations we work for in the commercial sector, they're elite, right? But what technology does is you democratize what's for the elite and you make it for everyone. And I think technologies like natural language processing and just generally artificial intelligence, but artificial intelligence gets such a kind of carte blanche kind of, oh, that's AI, and everyone's talking about AI now, and the majority of it is not AI in that sense. But when you really take natural language processing as an area of artificial intelligence and machine learning, it has huge impact to society and to humanity. So why did I join? I believe that we could, as humans, we're great at cheating. So we just came back from talking about hard work, and the reality is you can also cheat way forward as well. And so when I was at school, I kind of utilized machines, phenomenal natural language processing machines around me, very young, using these natural language processing algorithms. And they were called Stephen Brett and Christopher Baisley. They were two people in my class who I could copy from to be able to make sure that I could learn as well as they could. They were the brainy ones, right? They were these ultimate algorithms, because that's what humans are, right, at the end of the day, especially when it comes to understanding words. And so when we look at what we apply in natural language processing and natural language generation in, and kind of ultimate summarization algorithms and so forth to summarize this world of information, imagine when you can do that for children. Imagine when you can write their reports for them, and they need to know about King Henry VIII. They just say, hey, Primer, or whoever you're working with, hey, Primer, tell me about King Henry VIII and all the people he's affiliated to. And you'll get all of his wives, you get all the key events that he's involved with. And so it can actually generate through GPT's models and transformer models and so forth. We can generate all the understanding, all the critical elements, all the key entities, all the key events. We can summarize that and write the report for the child. So that's incredible, right? That's like, here we go. Every time you go to university, you can just hand in your report and go like that. But it's not quite the case, right? Because you, me, and children around the world are the most wonderful wonderful, curious, imaginative things, right? That's what our brains are really there to do. They're not there to do numbers and sit in classrooms like they have to sit on Zoom right now, the worst way of kind of learning in every single way for the kids in COVID lockdown. And so natural language processing for me allows us a chance for humanity to really change the landscape of humanity now, and allow us as humans to be empowered with information, shortcut that cheat, as it were, and actually start to use our curiosity and imagination to be able to do even further breakthroughs. Because at the end of the day, all the breakthroughs in the world have been through curiosity and imagination. They haven't been all through calculation and so forth. The majority have been through, imagine if, or what if. And so having that time and space to be able to do that, I believe that's why I'm so excited about natural language processing generally, because it frees the human to be, more human in many ways. And so excited about that. Otherwise, what else am I excited about? I'm quite excited about a thing I saw, I've been working with a little bit, which is voice analysis, and how you can utilize voice analysis and use your voice, record your voice, and get a whole breakdown of what you are and the problems your health may face. So I'll give you a little snapshot of a company I was looking at, and that is I recorded my voice, I sent it over to them, they sent the results back, and they said, have you eaten artichoke? And I was like, yes, I have. And have you got a problem with your back? And they sent a little diagram, and it was that particular vertebrae. And I was like, yes. And these technologies, this kind of voodoo, weird magic stuff, is really out there. And we know nothing about, the voice and how that really is a kind of marker of health and so forth. And these companies are out there looking at this in such a way which is going to be phenomenal in terms of diagnosis of health and diseases and so forth. And I'm a wonderful, I love the wonderful sport of golf. And a wonderful person called Peter Allis was a commentator. I don't know if you know him, he's very famous. He just died last year, I think it was.
Know who he is? Yes, yeah. Obviously, golf is in the news at the moment with Tiger's accident and whatnot.
Right. Yeah. He was in there, and he basically, so poor old Alex, he died, he passed away, and when he did his last commentary, you could tell from his voice that he was so poorly, even though he may have not known at the time. Anyway, so that. And then lastly, I'd add in quantum. I think quantum computing is something that I've been involved in for the last, I'm invested in a company. I think they're an incredible small company who are actually not small anymore, they're growing massively. And the potential of quantum computing for this planet is, again, will redefine humanity, how we look at medicines, how we find new materials. It is going to change the way that we have climate change as well, and how we approach climate change, and potentially save us from those issues. And so, yeah, that's my download.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that, Ben. That was really great. I got a lot of value out of it, and hopefully people watching it did as well. So thanks for your time, and thank you to everybody for watching. For more London Tech podcasts, make sure you're subscribing and following and up to date on all the different platforms and socials. But check out Ben, check out Primer, and thanks for everyone's time. Thank you.